The moment he knows true love, he loses his life. Prologue. There are some things in this world that shouldn't exist. The curse was one of them. I had heard the whispers my entire life, old family secrets passed down through generations like poisoned heirlooms. Stories about my bloodline, about the men who came before me, who built empires and destroyed kingdoms, who commanded loyalty with a glance and crushed enemies beneath their heels. But every empire has a price. My grandfather told me the night before he died. His hands were cold, his breathing shallow, but his eyes, those steel-gray eyes that had terrified grown men, burned with something close to regret. "The moment you know true love, boy, you'll die," he'd rasped, gripping my wrist with surprising strength. "Not today, not tomorrow, but the instant your heart recognizes its match, the second you can no longer lie to yourself, death will come for you, just as it came for your father, just as it came for me." I was 17. I thought he was delirious. Then I watched him die exactly 48 hours later, 2 days after my grandmother had whispered those 3 words to him for the first time in 60 years of marriage. 2 days after she'd finally stopped being angry about something I never understood and had taken his hand and said, "I love you, you stubborn old fool." His heart simply stopped. No medical explanation, no prior condition, just gone. That's when I started to believe. I built my life around that curse, constructed walls so high that nothing could penetrate them. I learned to be cold, calculated, untouchable. I fucked without feeling. I commanded without caring. I accumulated power the way other men collected watches, obsessively, endlessly, as if the next acquisition would finally fill the void. For 15 years, it worked. I ran the largest private security firm on the East Coast. I had politicians in my pocket and enemies in the ground. I had everything a man could want, except the one thing I couldn't have: love. And I was fine with that. Until her. She walked into my office on a Tuesday morning with a coffee stain on her blouse and murder in her green eyes. She wasn't there to seduce me, or impress me, or beg for a job. She was there because her brother owed me money, and she was going to pay his debt, not with her body, not with tears, but with her goddamn skill set and her razor-sharp mind. "I'll work for you for 6 months, she'd said, meeting my gaze without flinching, "but I have conditions." No one gave me conditions. I should have thrown her out. Instead, I hired her. And that was my first mistake. Because somewhere between her sharp comebacks and her refusal to be intimidated, somewhere between the late nights reviewing security protocols and the morning she brought me coffee exactly the way I liked it without asking, I started to feel something I'd spent 32 years avoiding. I told myself it was attraction, lust, physical need. I told myself I could control it. I told myself a lot of things. But the truth was simpler and far more terrifying. I was falling in love with her. And when I finally admitted it, when I could no longer deny what she'd become to me, I would die. The curse demanded it. But here's the thing about curses. They don't account for the fact that some things are worth dying for. And she was one of them. Chapter 1. Cillian. The coffee stain was the first thing I noticed. A dark bloom spreading across the white silk of her blouse, just above her left breast. Most women would have tried to hide it, crossed their arms, angled their body, done something to minimize the imperfection. She didn't even seem to notice it. She stood in the center of my office like she owned it, her green eyes scanning the space with the kind of assessment I usually reserved for security threats. Taking inventory, calculating angles, looking for weaknesses. I liked that about her immediately, which was precisely why I should have sent her away. "Mr. Cross," she said, and her voice was nothing like I expected, not sweet or sultry or trying to charm, just direct, professional. "I appreciate you seeing me on such short notice." I didn't respond. I leaned back in my chair and studied her instead, letting the silence stretch. It was a tactic I'd perfected over the years. Make them uncomfortable, make them talk, make them reveal more than they intended. She didn't squirm, didn't rush to fill the quiet, just stood there and waited, her chin lifted slightly, her hands relaxed at her sides. "You're Rowan Hayes," I said finally. "Connor Hayes' sister." Something flickered across her face. Anger, maybe, or shame. It was gone before I could identify it. "Yes. Your brother owes me $200,000. I know. He has until the end of the month to pay it back. That's 8 days. He doesn't have it." At least she was honest. Most people who came begging for extensions or forgiveness tried to lie first. Spun elaborate stories about how the money was coming, how there'd been a misunderstanding, how they just needed a little more time. "Then he has a problem," I said. "I have a solution." I raised an eyebrow. This should be interesting. "I'll work for you," she continued. 6 months, full time, whatever you need. Consider it payment for Connor's debt." I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I steepled my fingers and regarded her with the kind of cold assessment that made hardened criminals confess. "And what exactly do you think you can offer me that's worth $200,000? Her jaw tightened. Just a fraction. Just enough to tell me I'd landed a hit. "I have a master's degree in cybersecurity from MIT. I've worked for 3 Fortune 500 companies building their security infrastructure. I can code in 12 languages, crack most encryption systems in under an hour, and I've never met a firewall I couldn't breach." She paused, then added, "And I'm very good at finding things people don't want found." Now that was interesting. I pulled her resume from the folder Marcus had prepared. MIT, just like she'd said. Multiple certifications, references from executives I actually knew. On paper, she was impressive. In person, she was dangerous. Not because of her skills, though those were formidable, but because of the way she looked at me, like I didn't intimidate her, like she saw right through the carefully constructed armor I wore and found it amusing. "Why?" I asked. She blinked. "Why? What? Why would you sacrifice 6 months of your life to pay off your brother's gambling debts?" The question seemed to surprise her. Good. I wanted her off balance. "Because he's my brother," she said simply, "and because the alternative is watching you break both his legs." "That's not what I do," I said mildly. "Isn't it?" She held my gaze, unflinching. Christ, she had nerve. "I run a security company," I said. "We provide protection services, risk assessment, digital security. We're legitimate. With a side business in high-interest loans to desperate people," she said. "Very legitimate." I should have been angry, should have had Marcus escort her out. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Interest. "You have conditions," I said, remembering what she'd said on the phone. 3 of them, she confirmed. "First, I work normal business hours. 9 to 6, Monday through Friday. No weekends unless there's an emergency." I nearly laughed. No one who worked for me kept normal hours. Security threats didn't wait for business days. "Second," she continued before I could object, "my work stays legal. I won't hack anyone's personal accounts, steal information, or help you blackmail people." Again with the accusations. She really didn't know when to quit. "And third?" She lifted her chin higher. "You don't touch me, not once, not ever. This is a professional arrangement, nothing more." There it was. The real reason for her nerves. She thought I'd demand sexual favors as part of the deal. Thought I was the kind of man who'd use her desperation against her. She wasn't entirely wrong about what kind of man I was, but she was wrong about that. "I don't fuck my employees," I said flatly. "It's bad for business." Relief flickered across her face, quickly masked. Good. She should be relieved. What I felt when I looked at her, this sharp, unexpected pull, was exactly why I needed to keep my distance. The curse whispered in the back of my mind, a reminder, a warning. "Here's my counteroffer," I said. "You work for me for 6 months. During that time, you're on call. If I need you at midnight, you come. If I need you on Sunday, you show up. You do whatever I tell you to do, within legal boundaries, since you're so concerned about that." I leaned forward, pinning her with my gaze. "And at the end of 6 months, if you've proven yourself useful, your brother's debt is forgiven. If you haven't, you're both still on the hook." "That wasn't the deal." "That's the only deal." I cut her off. "Take it or leave it." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her mind working, calculating odds, weighing options, deciding whether I was bluffing. I wasn't. "Fine," she said finally. "I'll take it." I should have felt satisfied, victorious. Instead, I felt something uncomfortably close to regret. Because I'd just tied Rowan Hayes to me for 6 months. 6 months of seeing her every day. 6 months of that sharp tongue and those challenging eyes. 6 months of temptation I couldn't afford. "Marcus will get you set up," I said, pressing the intercom button. "You start tomorrow, 8 a.m. Don't be late." "I'm never late," she said. She turned to leave, and I watched her walk toward the door, back straight, head high, that coffee stain still blooming across her blouse like a badge of defiance. "Rowan," I called out. She stopped, glanced back over her shoulder. "You have coffee on your shirt." She looked down, noticed it for the first time, and laughed. Actually laughed. A bright, unexpected sound that did something dangerous to my chest. "So I do," she said. "Guess I was too busy planning how to convince a criminal to hire me to notice." Then she walked out, leaving me alone in my office with a decision I couldn't take back and a feeling I couldn't name. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "She's interesting. You sure about this?" No, I wasn't sure about anything anymore. But I typed back, "Get her clearance. Full access to our systems. I want to see what she can do." I stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city. Somewhere down there, Rowan Hayes was probably already regretting her decision, wondering what she had just gotten herself into. She should be wondering. Because I was a man who couldn't afford to feel, a man living under a death sentence that only activated when I let someone in. And she just walked into my life with her green eyes and her sharp mind and her complete disregard for the walls I'd built. 6 months. I could keep my distance for 6 months. I had to. Because the alternative was falling for her. And that would kill me. Chapter 2. Rowan. I made it to my car before my hands started shaking. The adrenaline that had carried me through the meeting with Cillian Cross drained out of me all at once, leaving my legs weak and my heart hammering against my ribs. I gripped the steering wheel and forced myself to breathe. In, out, in, out. What the hell did I just do? I'd just sold myself to one of the most dangerous men in Boston. 6 months of my life, handed over to a man whose eyes were so cold they could freeze fire. A man who looked at me like I was a problem he hadn't decided how to solve yet. My phone buzzed. "Connor." I didn't answer. Couldn't. Not yet. Not when I was still trying to process what I'd done for him. Again. This was the 3rd time I'd bailed Connor out. 3rd time I'd sacrificed something of mine to cover his mistakes. First it was my college fund when he got arrested for possession. Then it was my apartment when he needed a place to hide from dealers he'd screwed over. Now this. $200,000 in gambling debts. To Cillian Cross, of all people. My brother had a gift for finding the worst possible trouble. The phone rang again. This time, I answered. Did he go for it? Connor's voice was desperate, hopeful. Did Cross agree? Yes, I said flatly. I start tomorrow. Jesus, Rowan, thank you. Thank you so much. I swear I'll make this up to you. You won't. I cut him off. You never do. But you're my brother, and I love you, so here we are. Silence on the other end. Then, quieter, I'm sorry. I know, I said, and I did. Connor was always sorry. Sorry never stopped him from doing it again. I hung up and started the car. Drove home on autopilot while my mind replayed every second of that meeting. Cillian Cross was nothing like I'd expected. I'd done my research before walking into that office. Read every article, every profile, every rumor I could find. On paper, he was a self-made millionaire who'd built Cross Security from the ground up. Former military, decorated service record, honorable discharge. Legitimate businessman with a spotless reputation. But the rumors told a different story. Whispers about side businesses, money laundering, connections to people who made problems disappear. Nothing concrete. Nothing provable. Just shadows and suggestions, and the kind of fear that came from knowing better than to ask questions. I'd expected a thug in an expensive suit. A bully with money. Instead, I got something far more dangerous. Cillian Cross was beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful. Sharp, precise, deadly. Dark hair that was just long enough to be interesting. A face that could have been carved from marble. And those eyes. Steel gray, calculating, missing nothing. He'd looked at me like he could see straight through to every secret I'd ever kept. I hated that I'd noticed how attractive he was. Hated that my pulse had kicked up when he'd leaned forward and pinned me with that gaze. Hated that some stupid, self-destructive part of me had wondered what it would be like to be looked at by a man like that, with something other than cold assessment. Focus, Rowan. He's your boss for the next 6 months. Nothing more. I pulled into my apartment complex and sat in the parking lot, staring at nothing. Tomorrow morning, I'd walk into Cross Security and start working for a man I didn't trust, doing God knows what, all to save my brother from his own stupidity. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from an unknown number. This is Marcus Chen, Mr. Cross's right hand. Your security clearance is being processed. Report to the main office at 8 a.m. sharp. Dress code is business professional. Building access code 4782. Mining cam. Efficient. I'd give them that. I dragged myself upstairs to my apartment. A one-bedroom that was too expensive and too small, but it was mine. I'd earned it. Built a career from nothing. Climbed my way up in an industry that didn't like women. Proved myself over and over again. And now I was throwing it all away to work for a man who probably laundered money and broke people's kneecaps in his spare time. I stripped off the coffee-stained blouse and threw it in the trash. Couldn't look at it anymore. Couldn't stand the reminder of how nervous I'd been walking into that office, how I'd spilled my coffee all over myself in the parking garage because my hands were shaking. At least Cross hadn't mentioned it. Well, not until I was leaving. You have coffee on your shirt. The way he'd said it, not mocking, not condescending, just observational, had made me laugh. Actually laugh, despite everything. Despite the fact that I'd just sold 6 months of my life to him. I showered, put on sweatpants, and tried to sleep. Couldn't. Instead, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling, thinking about steel gray eyes and the way Cillian Cross had looked at me like I was a puzzle he intended to solve. Don't be stupid, I told myself. He's dangerous. He's probably a criminal. And he's your employer, which makes him completely off limits, even if he wasn't both of those things. But I couldn't stop thinking about the moment when he'd leaned forward and said, I don't fuck my employees. The relief I'd felt should have been absolute. Instead, there'd been something else buried underneath it. Something I didn't want to examine too closely. Disappointment. Which was insane. Completely insane. I didn't want Cillian Cross. I didn't even like him. I'd been in his presence for all of 20 minutes, and he'd been cold, controlling, and borderline threatening. So why couldn't I stop thinking about him? At 3 a.m, I gave up on sleep, went to my laptop and did what I always did when I needed to feel in control. I dug deeper. Cross Security's public records were impeccable. But I wasn't interested in public records. I wanted the truth. The real story behind the man who now owned 6 months of my life. I found his military record first. Marines. Multiple tours. Decorated for valor. Honorable discharge after an incident in Afghanistan that was heavily redacted. Interesting. I found property records. A penthouse in Back Bay worth $8 million. A house on the Cape. Another in the Berkshires. All paid in cash. Very interesting. I found business filings, tax returns, corporate structures, all legitimate, all clean, almost too clean. And then I found something else. Buried in old newspaper archives from 15 years ago, an obituary. Patrick Cross, 68, died suddenly at his home on Tuesday evening, beloved husband of Margaret Cross. Survived by his grandson, Cillian Cross, 17. No parents mentioned, just a grandfather and a teenager. I searched for more, found Margaret Cross's obituary from 3 years later. Cancer. So Cillian Cross had been alone since he was 20, built everything himself, with no family, no safety net. That explained the hardness, the walls, the complete lack of warmth in those steel-gray eyes. It didn't explain why I felt something uncomfortably close to sympathy for him. I closed the laptop and finally managed to fall asleep just as the sun started to rise. My alarm went off 3 hours later. I got up, got dressed in my best black suit, and prepared to walk into the lion's den. Cross Security occupied the top 3 floors of a glass tower in the financial district. The lobby was all marble and chrome, designed to intimidate. Security was tight. 2 guards at the desk, cameras everywhere, keycard access to the elevators. I gave my name to the guard. He checked his list, handed me a temporary badge, and directed me to the 32nd floor. The elevator ride felt like an eternity. When the doors opened, I stepped into a reception area that was somehow both modern and understated. Everything was clean lines and neutral colors, expensive without being flashy. A man stood waiting for me, Asian, early 30s, perfectly tailored suit. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Ms. Hayes, I'm Marcus Chen." I shook his hand. His grip was firm, assessing. "Follow me," he said. "Mr. Cross is waiting." Of course he was. I followed Marcus through a maze of corridors, past offices where people worked in focused silence. Everyone we passed glanced up, took note of me, then went back to work. No one smiled. No one greeted me. This wasn't a friendly workplace. This was a military operation disguised as a corporation. Marcus stopped in front of a door at the end of the hall, knocked once. "Come in." Cillian's voice, deep, controlled, utterly devoid of warmth. Marcus opened the door. "Good luck," he said quietly. Then he left me alone with the man who held my brother's life in his hands. And mine, apparently. Cillian sat behind his desk, exactly as he had yesterday. Same position, same cold assessment in his eyes. But this time, he wasn't alone. 3 laptops were spread across his desk, all of them displaying what looked like security footage. Live feeds from multiple locations. He looked up when I entered. Closed the door. I did. "You're 2 minutes early," he said. "I told you I'm never late," I replied. Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. Gone in an instant. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Let's see if you're actually as good as you claim to be." Chapter 3. Cillian. She was good. Better than good. In the 3 hours since she'd sat down at the workstation I'd set up for her, Rowan Hayes had done what my best security analyst had failed to do in 3 weeks. She'd found the vulnerability. I stood behind her, watching her fingers fly across the keyboard. She'd tied her dark hair back in a ponytail, revealing the elegant line of her neck, a neck I had no business noticing. "There," she said, pointing at the screen. "Your firewall has a back door. Someone coded it in deliberately. See this string? It's hidden in what looks like standard error handling, but it's actually creating an access point." I leaned closer, studying the code. She was right. Son of a bitch, she was right. "Who wrote this section?" I asked, keeping my voice level despite the fury building in my chest. "According to your version control logs, someone named Derek Morrison, 3 months ago." Derek, my lead developer, a man I'd trusted for 5 years, a man who had access to every system we ran, a man who just betrayed me. I pulled out my phone and texted Marcus, "Find Derek Morrison. Bring him to the private conference room, now." The reply came instantly. "On it." Rowan swiveled in her chair to look at me. "You want me to trace where the back door leads? See who's been using it?" "Yes," I said, "and I want to know everything they've accessed. Every file, every system, every piece of data." She nodded and turned back to her screen. Her fingers were already moving again, executing commands I barely followed. This was her element, her battlefield. I watched her work, mesmerized, despite myself. There was something almost violent in the way she attacked the code. Ruthless, precise, no hesitation. "They've been in your client database," she said after a few minutes. "Downloaded contact information for at least 30 high-value accounts. Also accessed your financial records, proprietary security protocols, and," she paused, "your personal files." My jaw tightened. Personal files meant medical records, banking information, property deeds, everything someone would need to destroy me. "Can you tell who they're selling to?" "Give me 10 minutes," she said. I gave her 20, watched her work in silence, cataloging every detail. The way she bit her lower lip when she was concentrating, the furrow between her eyebrows when she encountered resistance, the small sound of satisfaction when she broke through. I needed to stop noticing these things. "Got it," she said finally. "The data's being routed to an IP address registered to Titan Security Solutions." Titan. My biggest competitor, run by a vindictive bastard named Vincent Kane who'd been trying to destroy me for years. Of course it was Kane. "How much did they pay him?" I asked. Rowan pulled up another window. "Looks like 50,000, transferred in 5 installments over the past 3 months. 50,000. Derek had sold out everything I'd built for $50,000. My phone buzzed. "Marcus? Got him. Conference room B." I looked at Rowan. "Come with me." She hesitated. "Why?" "Because you found this. You should see what happens next." I could see the conflict on her face. Curiosity warring with caution. She was smart enough to know this wouldn't be pleasant. But she stood up and followed me anyway. Conference room B was in the back corner of the building. No windows. Soundproof. We used it for sensitive conversations that needed to stay private. Derek sat in a chair in the center of the room, Marcus standing guard behind him. Derek looked nervous but defiant, like he thought he could talk his way out of this. He couldn't. I closed the door behind Rowan and me, locked it. "Mr. Cross," Derek started. "I don't know what this is about, but 3 months ago, I cut him off," my voice deadly calm. "You inserted a back door into our firewall. You've been selling our data to Vincent Kane for $50,000. Do you deny it?" The color drained from his face. "I don't. How did you?" "Answer the question," I said. He swallowed hard, looked at Marcus, then at Rowan, then back at me, searching for an escape route that didn't exist. "Kane approached me," he said finally. "He said he just wanted to know what you were working on. That it wasn't a big deal." "And you believed him," I said flatly. "I needed the money. My wife's medical bills." "You could have asked me for help," I said. "Instead, you betrayed me, sold out our clients, put everything I've built at risk." "Please," Derek's voice cracked. "I'll do anything. I'll pay it back. "You're fired," I said. "Effective immediately. Marcus will escort you out. You have 10 minutes to clear your desk. If you ever come near this building again, I'll have you arrested for corporate espionage." I turned to Marcus. "Make sure he doesn't take anything that doesn't belong to him. And get legal on the phone. I want charges filed by end of business today." Marcus nodded and hauled Derek to his feet. Derek was crying now, begging, but I was done listening. I'd given him a chance, given him a good job, fair pay, respect, and he'd thrown it away for pocket change from a man who wanted to destroy me. That was the problem with trust. It only took one person to prove why you should never give it. When they were gone, I turned to find Rowan watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "What?" I asked. "You didn't hurt him," she said quietly. "I told you, that's not what I do." "But you could have," she said. "No one would have stopped you, and part of you wanted to. I could see it." She was right. Part of me had wanted to make Derek feel even a fraction of the betrayal I felt, wanted to hurt him the way he'd hurt me. But I didn't, because violence was easy. Violence was what people expected from a man like me. Restraint was harder. "You see a lot," I said. "It's my job to see things," she replied. We stood there for a moment, the silence stretching between us. I should have sent her back to work. Should have put distance between us before this thing I was feeling got any worse. Instead, I said, "You did good work today, better than I expected." Something shifted in her expression, surprise maybe, or pleasure at the compliment. "Thank you," she said. "Don't thank me yet," I said. "Now we have to figure out how much damage Derek's done. And then we're going to make Vincent Kane regret the day he decided to fuck with me." A small smile played at the corner of her mouth. "Legally, right?" "Of course," I said, "legally." Though the definition of legal was somewhat flexible when you had the right lawyers. We walked back to her workstation together. She settled into her chair, already pulling up new windows, new code, ready to dive back in. I stood behind her again, watching her work. And for the first time in 15 years, I let myself imagine what it might be like to have someone beside me. Someone who saw me, really saw me, and didn't run. Someone like her. The thought terrified me. Because the curse was real. My grandfather had died because of it, my father before him. An entire lineage of men who'd learned too late that some things were more dangerous than bullets or betrayal. Love was one of them. And I was already feeling things for Rowan Hayes that I had no business feeling. "Mr. Cross?" I blinked. She was looking at me over her shoulder, concern in those green eyes. "You all right?" "Fine," I said, "just thinking." "About Kane?" "Among other things," I said. She held my gaze for a moment longer, and I wondered if she could see the war happening inside me. The pull between what I wanted and what would keep me alive. Then she turned back to her screen, and I was left standing there, watching the woman who could kill me without even knowing it. And the worst part? I wasn't sure I cared anymore. Chapter 4. Rowan. 3 weeks in, and I still couldn't figure Cillian Cross out. He was a contradiction wrapped in expensive suits and controlled silence. Cold one moment, unexpectedly thoughtful the next. He'd fire a man without blinking, then stay up until 3 in the morning, making sure every client affected by the data breach was personally notified and protected. He terrified me. He fascinated me. And that was becoming a serious problem. It was nearly midnight on a Friday, and I was still at my desk, running security audits on the new firewall protocols I'd implemented. Most of the office had cleared out hours ago. Even Marcus had left, though not before giving me a look that suggested he knew exactly why I was staying late. Because Cillian was still here, working in his office with the door half open, a pool of light spilling into the dark hallway. I told myself I was finishing up critical work, that it had nothing to do with the fact that these late-night hours, when it was just the two of us in the building, had become my favorite part of the day. I was a terrible liar, even to myself. "You're still here." I jumped at the sound of his voice, turned to find him leaning against the doorframe of my workspace, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms that had no business being that distracting. "So are you," I said. "I live here," he said. Not quite a smile, but close. "What's your excuse?" "Making sure Kane can't get back in," I said, gesturing at my screen. "I've rebuilt the entire security architecture. Want to make sure there aren't any holes." He walked over, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that made my pulse kick up in ways I refused to acknowledge. "You don't have to work this late," he said quietly. "I meant what I said about business hours." "I know," I said, "but I want to. This is interesting work." And I caught myself before I said too much, before I admitted that I liked being here, liked working for him. "And?" he prompted. "And I don't have anywhere else to be," I said, which was true enough. Something flickered across his face, understanding maybe, or recognition. "Come on," he said, "you need a break." "I'm fine." "That wasn't a suggestion," he said, but there was no edge to it, just quiet insistence. I saved my work and followed him to his office. He poured 2 glasses of scotch from a crystal decanter on the credenza, handed me one. "I don't drink on the job," I said. "It's after midnight on a Friday," he said. "You're not on the job. You're just stubborn." I took the glass. Our fingers brushed, and the contact sent an electric shock straight through me. From the way his jaw tightened, he felt it too. We stood there for a moment, the silence heavy with things neither of us would say. Then he moved to the window, putting distance between us. "Smart man." "How's your brother?" he asked, looking out at the city. The question surprised me. In 3 weeks, he'd never asked about Connor, never mentioned the debt that had brought me here in the first place. "Clean," I said, "for now. He's attending GA meetings, found a sponsor, says he's serious about changing this time." "Do you believe him?" "I want to," I said honestly, "but he said it before, and I'm tired of being disappointed." Cillian turned to face me. "Why do you keep saving him?" It was the same question he'd asked in our first meeting, but this time there was no judgment in it, just genuine curiosity. "Because he's my brother," I said, "and because when our parents died, I promised them I'd take care of him." Understanding crossed his features. "How old were you?" 18. Connor was 15. Car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light. I took a sip of the scotch, letting the burn ground me. I became his legal guardian, worked 2 jobs to keep us fed, got him through high school while I did community college online. "And he's never stopped needing you to save him," Cillian said quietly. "No," I said, "he hasn't." Cillian was quiet for a long moment. Then, "My grandfather raised me. My parents died when I was young. I don't remember them." I knew this already from my late-night research, but hearing him say it, voluntarily offering up pieces of himself, felt significant. "He was hard," Cillian continued, "demanded perfection, never showed affection, but he taught me everything I know about building something from nothing, about loyalty, about power." "You loved him," I said. "I did," he said, "which is why when he died, it destroyed me." There was something in his voice, something raw that he quickly locked away. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "Don't be," he said. "It taught me an important lesson." "What lesson?" He turned back to the window. "That loving someone gives them power over you, the power to hurt you, to leave you, to destroy everything you've built." The words hung between us, heavy with meaning I was only beginning to understand. "So you don't let anyone close," I said. "It's safer that way," he said. "Safer," I repeated, "but lonelier." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something in those steel gray eyes that made my breath catch. Longing, hunger, fear. "Yes," he said quietly, "lonelier." The air between us felt charged, dangerous. I should have left. Should have finished my drink and walked away before this moment became something we couldn't take back. Instead, I said, "What if you let someone in, just once? Would it really be so terrible?" His jaw clenched. "You don't understand." "Then explain it to me," I said. "I can't," he said. "Can't or won't?" "Both," he said. Then, quieter, "You should go home, Rowan." It was a dismissal, clear and final. But I heard what he didn't say. "Leave, before I do something we'll both regret." I set down my glass. "Good night, Mr. Cross." "Cillian," he said. I stopped at the door, looked back. "When we're alone," he said, "call me Cillian." It was such a small thing, a first name, but the way he said it, like he was giving me something precious, made it feel monumental. "Good night, Cillian," I said. I left before he could see how much that simple permission affected me, before he could see that I was already in too deep. Because somewhere in the past 3 weeks, I'd stopped seeing Cillian Cross as my dangerous employer and started seeing him as something else entirely. As a man who was just as lonely as I was. A man who fascinated and terrified me in equal measure. A man I was dangerously close to falling for. And I had no idea that falling for him would be the thing that killed him. Not yet, but I would learn soon enough. We both would. Chapter 5. Cillian. I knew I was in trouble the moment she walked into the office wearing that dress. It was for the client dinner. A necessary evil. where I had to schmooze politicians and corporate executives while pretending I gave a damn about their golf games and their mistresses. I'd asked Rowan to attend as my date. Not a real date. I'd clarified immediately. Just professional cover so I didn't have to field questions about why I was always alone. She'd agreed without hesitation, which should have been my first warning. The dress was emerald green, the exact shade of her eyes. It hugged every curve before falling in soft waves to her knees. Modest by most standards. Devastating on her. She'd left her hair down, dark waves cascading over bare shoulders, minimal jewelry, just enough makeup to highlight features that didn't need highlighting. She was breathtaking. And I was fucked. "Is this okay?" she asked, uncertainty flickering across her face. I wasn't sure what to wear. Marcus said formal but not too formal, whatever that means. "It's perfect," I managed. My voice came out rougher than intended. She smiled, and something in my chest constricted painfully. "Stop it," I told myself. "This is business, nothing more." But when I offered her my arm and felt her hand slide into the crook of my elbow, business was the last thing on my mind. The restaurant was one of those places where senators made deals and CEOs destroyed careers over $30 martinis. All dark wood and dim lighting, designed for discretion and power plays. Every head turned when we walked in. I was used to the attention. What I wasn't used to was the possessive fury that surged through me when I caught men looking at Rowan like she was something they could have. She wasn't. She couldn't be. But that didn't stop me from pulling her closer as we navigated through the crowd. Senator Michaels was already at our table, along with his chief of staff and the head of a tech conglomerate I'd been courting for months. They stood when we approached, handshakes and greetings exchanged with practiced ease. "And who is this lovely creature?" Michaels asked, his eyes lingering too long on Rowan's neckline. I wanted to break his fingers. Instead, I smiled. "Rowan Hayes, my head of cybersecurity. Rowan, Senator Michaels." Rowan shook his hand with perfect professionalism. "Senator, I've read about your proposed data privacy legislation. Interesting approach, though I think you're underestimating the implementation challenges." Michaels blinked, clearly not expecting her to have an opinion, much less an informed one. "Is that so?" "The encryption standards you're proposing would cripple most small businesses," she continued smoothly. "But if you amended Section 3 to include a tiered compliance framework, you'd get corporate buy-in without sacrificing security." I watched Michaels' expression shift from condescension to genuine interest. This was why I'd brought her. Not because she looked good on my arm, though she did, but because she was brilliant and unafraid to prove it. The dinner proceeded with Rowan charming every single person at the table without even trying. She debated policy with Michaels, discussed market trends with the tech CEO, and somehow got the chief of staff to laugh at a joke about encryption algorithms. I barely contributed, just sat there watching her shine, feeling something dangerous bloom in my chest. Pride, admiration, something deeper I refused to name. "You've got a keeper there, Cross," Michaels said as the plates were cleared. "Smart and beautiful, rare combination." "She's not mine," I said automatically. "We work together, that's all." Something flickered across Rowan's face, too fast for me to identify, but I felt the shift in energy between us. The dinner wrapped up with promises of future deals and thinly veiled threats disguised as friendly advice. Standard operating procedure for this world. I walked Rowan to my car, my hand on the small of her back, a gesture that looked possessive to anyone watching. That felt possessive to me. We drove in silence for the first few blocks. Then she spoke. "I'm not yours," she said quietly. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I know." "So why did hearing you say it feel like a rejection?" I pulled the car over. Couldn't focus on driving when she was saying things like that. When she was looking at me with those green eyes full of confusion and want. "Rowan, I know the rules," she cut me off. "You don't do relationships. You don't let people close. You're my employer, and this is professional, and I should just shut up and go home." "Yes," I said, "you should." "But?" "There is no but," I said, even though it was a lie, even though everything in me was screaming, "But I want you, but I can't stop thinking about you, but I'm terrified of what you're doing to me." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're lying," she said. "I can always tell when you're lying. Your jaw does this thing." She reached out, brushed her fingers along my jawline. The touch sent electricity through my entire body. "Don't," I said, catching her wrist, but I didn't let go. Couldn't. "Why not?" she whispered. "What are you so afraid of?" "Dying," I wanted to say, "loving you, and losing everything, admitting that you've gotten under my skin and knowing that it will kill me." Instead, I pulled her closer, watched her eyes widen as I leaned in, close enough to feel her breath on my lips. "I'm afraid," I said quietly, "that if I kiss you right now, I won't be able to stop." "Then don't stop," she breathed. For one perfect, terrible moment, I almost gave in, almost closed the distance and claimed her mouth and damned the consequences. But then, I saw my grandfather's face, heard his warning, felt the weight of the curse settling over me like a shroud. "The moment you know true love, you'll die." I released her wrist, put distance between us, even though it felt like tearing off my own skin. "I'm taking you home," I said, my voice cold, controlled, nothing like the chaos raging inside me. She flinched like I'd struck her. "Cillian." "This was a mistake," I said. "It can't happen again." I pulled back onto the road before she could respond, before I could see the hurt in her eyes and change my mind. The rest of the drive passed in heavy silence. When I pulled up to her building, she got out without a word, without looking back. I watched her walk away, every step feeling like a knife to the chest. I'd done the right thing, protected both of us, maintained the boundaries that kept me alive. So why did it feel like I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life? I drove home, in the dark, alone, like always, like I was supposed to be. But for the first time in 15 years, being alone felt like a prison instead of protection. And Rowan Hayes held the key. Chapter 6. Rowan. I didn't cry. Not when I walked into my apartment. Not when I stripped off the emerald dress and threw it in the back of my closet where I'd never have to look at it again. Not when I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of that almost kiss. I didn't cry because crying would mean admitting how much it hurt. How much he hurt. Instead, I got angry. Angry at Cillian for pulling me close, then pushing me away. Angry at myself for letting him. Angry at the stupid, naive part of me that had started to believe maybe, just maybe, he felt the same pull I did. By Monday morning, I'd built my walls back up. Professional, distant, everything he wanted. I walked into the office at exactly 8 a.m., went straight to my workstation, and buried myself in code. Didn't look toward his office. Didn't wonder if he'd noticed I was avoiding him. Definitely didn't care. At 10, Marcus appeared at my desk with a cup of coffee. Not my usual order from the cafe downstairs. My exact order from the place 3 blocks away that I'd mentioned once in passing 6 weeks ago. Cillian's doing. I took it without comment. Didn't say thank you. Didn't acknowledge the gesture. Marcus lingered. "He's being an idiot," he said quietly. I looked up. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do," Marcus said. "And for what it's worth, I've never seen him like this. Not in the 7 years I've worked for him." "Like what?" "Scared," Marcus said simply. Then he walked away before I could respond. Scared. Cillian Cross, the man who faced down senators and criminals with the same cold calculation, was scared. Of me? Of what we almost did? Or of something else entirely? I tried to focus on work. Tried to lose myself in the security protocols and encryption algorithms. But my mind kept drifting back to that moment in the car. The way he'd looked at me like I was something precious and terrifying all at once. If I kiss you right now, I won't be able to stop. What had he been so afraid of? What was worse than wanting someone and being wanted in return? At noon, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Meet me on the roof. Masha C." I should have ignored it. should have stayed at my desk and pretended I hadn't seen it. Instead, I found myself taking the elevator to the top floor, then climbing the maintenance stairs to the roof access. He was standing at the edge, looking out over the city. The wind whipped his dark hair, and even from behind I could see the tension in his shoulders. "You came," he said without turning around. "You summoned," I said coolly. "I'm still on the clock after all." He flinched. "Good. I wanted him to hurt the way I was hurting." "I owe you an explanation," he said. "You don't owe me anything," I said. "You made yourself clear. This is professional. I work for you. That's all it is. That's all it can ever be." I threw his words back at him like weapons. He turned then, and the look on his face almost undid me. Raw, vulnerable, nothing like the controlled mask he usually wore. "What if I don't want it to be?" he said quietly. My breath caught. "What? What if I want more?" he continued, taking a step toward me. "What if I can't stop thinking about you? What if walking away from you Saturday night was the hardest thing I've ever done?" "Then why did you do it?" I demanded. "Why push me away if you feel the same thing I do?" He ran a hand through his hair, frustration radiating off him in waves. "Because I'm trying to protect you." "From what? You?" "From me. From what happens when—" He stopped himself, shook his head. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." "Try me," I said. "I've seen a lot of things working in cybersecurity. Corporate espionage, government conspiracies, criminal enterprises. Whatever you're hiding, it can't be worse than what I'm imagining." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Trust me, it's worse." I closed the distance between us, looked up into those steel-gray eyes that had haunted my dreams. "Tell me anyway." For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then, so quietly I almost didn't hear it, "There's a curse on my family, on the men in my bloodline. We can't." He stopped again, jaw clenched, fighting some internal battle. "We can't fall in love," he finally said. "The moment we do, the moment we acknowledge it, we die. My grandfather, my father, every man in my family going back generations, they all died when they fell in love." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline, waiting for him to say he was joking. He didn't. "A curse," I said slowly. "You're telling me you believe in curses." "I watched my grandfather die," he said, his voice tight. 48 hours after my grandmother told him she loved him for the first time in 60 years. His heart just stopped. No explanation, no warning, just gone. "That's not a curse," I said gently. "That's a coincidence, a terrible, tragic coincidence." "My father died the day he proposed to my mother," Cillian continued. "Brain aneurysm, out of nowhere. He was 32, perfectly healthy." I wanted to argue. Wanted to tell him he was being irrational, that curses weren't real, and love didn't kill people. But the look in his eyes stopped me. This wasn't a story he was telling for effect. This was the truth as he knew it, the fear that had shaped his entire life. "So you've spent your whole life avoiding love," I said, "because you think it will kill you." "I don't think it," he said. "I know it. I've built my entire existence around avoiding this exact situation." "And then I walked into your office," I said quietly. "And then you walked into my office," he confirmed, "and every defense I've ever built started crumbling." The wind picked up, whipping my hair across my face. Cillian reached out, tucked it behind my ear. His fingers lingered on my cheek. "I'm falling for you, Rowan," he said, "and it terrifies me, because the moment I admit it, the moment I let myself feel it completely, I die." My heart was racing. Part of me wanted to laugh at the absurdity. Curses weren't real, love didn't kill people. But another part of me, the part that had watched this man for 2 months, that had seen the walls he built and the loneliness he carried, believed him. Not the curse, necessarily, but the fear, the absolute conviction that love would destroy him. "What if the curse isn't real?" I asked. "What if it's just grief and coincidence and fear passed down through generations?" "And what if it is real?" he countered. "What if loving you kills me?" I took his face in my hands, forced him to look at me. "Then we don't call it love," I said. "We don't acknowledge it. We don't say the words. But we don't run from it either. Rowan. I'm falling for you too, I said. And I don't care about curses or death or any of it. I care about you. Right here, right now, and I'm not walking away. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, I saw the exact moment he surrendered. This is a mistake, he whispered. Probably. I agreed. Then he kissed me, and the world didn't end. Not yet. Chapter 7. Cillian. 4 weeks. 4 weeks since I'd kissed Rowan on that rooftop and broken every rule I'd ever set for myself. 4 weeks since I'd stopped fighting what I felt for her. 4 weeks of stolen moments and late nights, of learning what made her laugh and what made her gasp, of discovering that she took her coffee with too much sugar and slept on the left side of the bed, of finding out that underneath the sharp mind and sharper tongue was someone soft and fierce and absolutely devastating. 4 weeks of waiting for the curse to claim me. It hadn't. Every morning I woke up alive felt like a miracle. Every night I fell asleep with Rowan in my arms felt like tempting fate. We were careful, didn't say the words, didn't acknowledge what this was. But I knew. God help me, I knew what I felt for her. I just refused to admit it. Refused to let the thought fully form. As long as I didn't acknowledge it, as long as I kept the words locked away, maybe the curse couldn't touch me. Maybe I could keep her. She was in my office now, curled up on the leather couch with her laptop, working on a security audit while I reviewed contracts. This had become our routine, her presence grounding me in ways I'd never thought possible. Kane's making moves again, she said, not looking up from her screen. I'm seeing attempted breaches on 3 different client systems, different attack vectors, but the signature's the same. Vincent Kane, still trying to destroy me even after I'd systematically dismantled his reputation and stolen half his client base. The man didn't know when to quit. Block him, I said. And send the logs to our legal team. I want him buried. Already done, she said with a small smile. And I may have left a little surprise in his system. Nothing illegal, of course. Just a reminder that he's outmatched. I crossed to the couch, sat beside her. You're terrifying, I said. You know that? You like terrifying, she said, leaning into me. I like you, I corrected, then froze. It was such a simple statement. 3 words. Harmless, really. But it felt like stepping off a cliff. Rowan looked up at me, something soft in her green eyes. I like you too, she said quietly. My chest tightened. A familiar fear clawed at me, but I pushed it down, like wasn't love, like was safe. I kissed her forehead, tried to ignore the way my heart was racing. Finish your work. We have dinner reservations at 8. Somewhere public this time? She asked, raising an eyebrow. Or are we still hiding? We'd been keeping this quiet. Not a secret, exactly, but private. I'd told myself it was to protect her from gossip, from the judgment that would come from dating her employer. But really, I was protecting myself. If no one knew, if we kept this contained, maybe the curse wouldn't notice. Stupid, superstitious thinking. Public, I said. I'm done hiding you. Her smile was brilliant, worth any risk. My phone rang. Marcus. We have a problem, he said without preamble. Connor Hayes is here. Says he needs to talk to his sister. He's drunk and making a scene in the lobby. Rowan's brother, the gambling addict who'd brought her into my life, the reason she'd been working for me in the first place. I looked at Rowan. Her expression had shuddered. Send him up, I told Marcus. Then to Rowan. You don't have to see him if you don't want to. He's my brother, she said, closing her laptop. Of course I have to see him. Connor stumbled in 5 minutes later, reeking of whiskey and bad decisions. His eyes were bloodshot, his clothes rumpled, nothing like the cleaned-up version Rowan had described from his GA meetings. Rowan, he slurred, there you are. Been looking everywhere for you. What do you want, Connor? Her voice was tired, resigned. I need money, he said, just a little, to tide me over. I got into some trouble. No, Rowan said flatly. Please, I just need... I said no, she repeated. I'm done bailing you out. I gave up 6 months of my life to pay off your last debt. I'm not doing it again. Connor's face twisted. 6 months? Looks like you're still here. Still working for him. His eyes cut to me. Or is it working under him now? I was on my feet before I'd even made the decision to move. Had Connor by the collar, slammed against the wall. Cillian, don't, Rowan said sharply. I forced myself to release him, to step back, but my voice was lethal when I spoke. Get out, I said, now, before I forget that you're her brother and treat you the way you deserve. This is your fault, Connor spat at Rowan. You think you're better than me now? Think because you're fucking some rich asshole you don't owe me anything? I don't owe you my life, Rowan said, and there were tears in her eyes, but her voice was steady. I've given you everything, my money, my time, my future, and you've thrown it all away. Every single time. Mom and Dad would be ashamed of you, Connor said viciously. I watched Rowan flinch like he'd struck her. I pressed the intercom. Marcus, remove Mr. Hayes from the building. If he returns, have him arrested for trespassing. Marcus appeared within seconds, along with 2 security guards. They hauled Connor out while he shouted obscenities and accusations. The door closed. Silence fell. Rowan stood frozen in the middle of my office, tears streaming down her face but making no sound. I went to her, pulled her into my arms. She didn't resist, just buried her face against my chest and finally broke. I can't save him, she sobbed. I've tried so hard and I can't save him. That's not your job, I said, stroking her hair. It was never your job. I promised my parents. You were 18, I said, a child yourself. They wouldn't have wanted you to destroy your life trying to fix his. She cried until she had nothing left, until my shirt was soaked and her breathing had evened out. I held her through all of it, feeling something crack open in my chest. This was what I'd been afraid of. Not the curse, not death, but this overwhelming need to protect her, to take her pain and make it mine, to do anything, sacrifice anything, to see her smile again. I love you, she whispered against my chest. The words hung in the air between us. 3 words I'd spent my entire life running from. 3 words that should have terrified me. Instead, I felt something else entirely. Something warm and terrifying and absolutely right. Rowan, I started. I know, she said quickly, pulling back to look at me. I know we said we wouldn't say it. I know about the curse. But I had to tell you. Just once. Even if you can't say it back. I looked down at this woman who'd turned my world upside down. Who'd made me want things I'd convinced myself I could never have. Who'd shown me that maybe, just maybe, being alive meant more than just surviving. And I made a choice. I love you too, I said. The moment the words left my mouth, something shifted. A weight I'd carried for 32 years lifted. And then my chest constricted. Pain, sharp and sudden and wrong. I couldn't breathe. Cillian? Rowan's voice was distant, frightened. Cillian, what's wrong? I tried to answer, couldn't. My vision blurred, my knees gave out. The last thing I saw before the darkness took me was Rowan's face, beautiful and terrified, as she screamed my name. The curse had finally come for me. And it was too late for regrets. Chapter 8. Rowan. The ambulance took 11 minutes to arrive. 11 minutes of me on the floor with Cillian's head in my lap, his body cold and unresponsive. 11 minutes of screaming for Marcus, for help, for anyone. 11 minutes of checking for a pulse that barely existed, for breath that came too shallow. 11 minutes of believing I'd killed him. The paramedics worked on him in the ambulance while I sat useless and terrified, my hands still shaking, his blood on my clothes, though I couldn't remember how it got there. Cardiac arrest, they said. No prior history, no explanation. They didn't need an explanation. I knew what this was. The curse was real, and I'd triggered it. 3 words. That's all it took. 3 words I should never have said. I love you. The words that had killed him. They rushed him into surgery. Something about his heart, about damage, about complications I couldn't process through the roaring in my ears. Marcus appeared at some point, pale and shaken, making calls and giving orders in that calm, efficient way of his. I sat in the waiting room and stared at nothing. Hours passed. Days, maybe. Time had stopped meaning anything. Ms. Hayes? A doctor stood in front of me, young, tired, with kind eyes that had delivered too much bad news. I stood on legs that didn't feel like mine. Is he? I couldn't finish the question. Couldn't say the word dead, because that would make it real. He's alive, the doctor said. Stable. We had to resuscitate him twice, but he's breathing on his own now. Relief hit me so hard I nearly collapsed. Can I see him? He's still unconscious. But yes, for a few minutes. She led me through sterile hallways to ICU. Cillian lay in a bed surrounded by machines, tubes running from his arms, monitors beeping steadily. His face was pale, almost gray, but his chest rose and fell in a rhythm that meant life. I took his hand. It was warm, real. I'm so sorry, I whispered. I'm so sorry. I should leave, should walk away before I finished what the curse had started. Loving him was killing him. But I couldn't let go of his hand. 3 days passed before he woke up. 3 days of me keeping vigil by his bedside, leaving only when nurses forced me to. 3 days of Marcus running the company from the waiting room. 3 days of doctors running tests and finding nothing wrong except a heart that had simply stopped. No blockages, no defects, no medical explanation. Just a curse. When his eyes finally opened, the first thing he did was look for me. Rowan, he rasped, his voice hoarse from the breathing tube. Don't talk, I said, tears streaming down my face. Just rest. You're okay. You're gonna be okay. The curse. I know, I said. I know, and I'm leaving. I'm walking away. I won't. I can't. My voice broke. I couldn't finish. His hand tightened on mine with surprising strength. No. Cillian, I almost killed you. I'm alive, he said. I died, and I came back. The curse took its shot and I'm still here. For how long? I demanded. A day? A week? Until the next time I say those words, or you feel too much, or we forget to be careful? I don't care, he said. You should care. I care. I can't watch you die because of me. I won't. He tried to sit up, grimaced at the pain. I pushed him back down gently, hating that even touching him felt dangerous now. Listen to me, he said. I spent 32 years existing, not living, just surviving, afraid to feel anything, afraid to want anything. And then you walked into my office and made me realize that a life without risk isn't a life at all. That's romantic, I said bitterly, but it's not practical. You died, Cillian. Your heart stopped. And it started again, he said. Maybe that's what breaks the curse, not avoiding love, but surviving it. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe. But I'd watched him collapse, watched the life drain from him, felt his pulse fade under my fingers. I can't take that risk, I whispered. Then I'll take it for both of us, he said. Rowan, look at me. I did. Those steel-gray eyes were clear and certain. I love you, he said. I said it once and I'll say it again. I love you. And if loving you kills me, then at least I'll die having felt something real. The monitors didn't spike. His heart kept beating, steady, strong. Say it back, he urged. Please, say it back. Cillian. Say it, he said. Test the curse, break it. Whatever happens, we face it together. I looked at the man who'd somehow become my entire world, who'd shown me that love wasn't weakness but the bravest thing we could do. And I made my choice. I love you, I said. I love you so much it terrifies me. I love you enough to walk away if that's what keeps you alive. I love you. The monitors remained steady, his breathing even, his hand warm in mine. Nothing happened. He smiled then, and it transformed his face. Made him look younger, lighter, free. See, he said, still alive. I laughed through my tears. You're insane. About you, yes, he agreed. I leaned down and kissed him. Gentle, careful, terrified that even this would be too much. But his heart kept beating, strong and steady against mine. "How?" I whispered. "How are you still here?" "Maybe the curse was never about death," he said. "Maybe it was about fear. About men in my family being so afraid of loss that they never let themselves live. And when they finally did, when they finally felt something real, the fear killed them. Not love. Or maybe," I said, "you're just stubborn enough to survive anything." "That too," he said, "especially when I have something worth surviving for." The doctors released him a week later with strict orders to rest and a prescription for medication he probably wouldn't take. They still had no explanation for what had happened, called it an anomaly, a fluke. We knew better. I moved into his penthouse that night, not because he asked, he didn't have to, but because after watching him die and come back, the idea of spending even one night apart was unbearable. We didn't talk about the curse anymore. Didn't analyze what had happened or why he'd survived. We just lived. And for the first time in both our lives, living felt like enough. 2 months later, on a Sunday morning with sunlight streaming through the windows, Cillian woke me with coffee and a question. "Marry me," he said. Not a question, a statement, very him. I set down my coffee cup. "Are you sure? Your father died the day he proposed." "I'm not my father," he said, "and I'm not afraid anymore. Marry me, Rowan. Let me spend whatever time I have left, whether that's 50 years or 50 days, proving that some things are worth any risk." I looked at this man who'd chosen love over fear, who'd died and come back, who made me believe in impossible things. "Yes," I said, "yes, I'll marry you." He kissed me then, deep and thorough and full of promise, and his heart kept beating, strong and steady and alive. Because maybe that was the secret all along. Love didn't kill. Fear did. And we'd chosen to be brave. Epilogue. Cillian. 2 years later, the house on the Cape was nothing like my penthouse in Boston. It was smaller, warmer, filled with the kind of comfortable chaos that came from actually living in a space rather than just occupying it. Books scattered on tables. Rowan's laptop perpetually open on the kitchen counter. My jacket thrown over a chair. Coffee mugs in the sink from this morning. Evidence of a life shared. I stood on the deck watching the ocean, the same ocean I'd looked at 1,000 times as a child when my grandfather brought me here. Back then, this place had felt like a prison, a reminder of everything I couldn't have, everything I had to deny myself. Now it felt like home. Arms slid around my waist from behind. Rowan rested her head against my back, and I felt the familiar flutter of movement between us. "He's kicking again," she said softly. I turned, placed my hand on her swollen belly, felt our son moving beneath my palm, a miracle I'd never thought I'd have. A future I'd been certain was impossible. "He's strong," I said. "Like his father," Rowan said, smiling up at me. "Stubborn, too." "Definitely like his father," I agreed. In the 2 years since I'd asked Rowan to marry me, since I'd survived what should have killed me, we'd built something neither of us had known we needed. A partnership, a home, a life that felt real and solid and utterly terrifying in the best possible way. We'd gotten married 6 months after my proposal. Small ceremony, just Marcus and a handful of close friends. Rowan, in a simple white dress that took my breath away. Me trying not to think about how my father had died on his wedding day. But I hadn't died. I'd said my vows and kissed my wife and danced with her under string lights while my heart beat strong and steady. The curse, it seemed, was truly broken. Or maybe it had never been what I thought it was. I'd spent months researching after I recovered, digging through family records, medical histories, old letters. What I found painted a different picture than the one my grandfather had given me. Every man in my family who died had been living with undiagnosed anxiety disorders, panic attacks that presented as heart problems, psychosomatic symptoms brought on by years of suppressing emotions and living in constant fear. The curse wasn't supernatural. It was trauma, passed down through generations like a poisoned inheritance. My cardiac arrest had been real, but it had been triggered by a lifetime of conditioning myself to believe that love would kill me. The moment I'd said those words to Rowan, my body had responded to the fear I'd carried for 32 years. And when I'd woken up in that hospital bed and chosen love anyway, chosen to say it again, to feel it fully, I'd broken the cycle. Not through magic, through choice. "What are you thinking about?" Rowan asked, her hand over mine on her belly. "Our son," I said, "and how I'm going to make sure he never carries the weight I did." "You'll teach him," she said, "the way you taught yourself. That love isn't something to fear. That feeling deeply isn't weakness. That being vulnerable is the bravest thing we can do." "When did you get so wise?" I asked. "I married you, didn't I?" she said with a grin. "Clearly, I'm a genius." I laughed and pulled her closer, careful of her belly. Or insane, one of the two. Can't it be both? We stood there, watching the waves, the sun beginning to set over the water. In 3 months, our son would be born. In 3 months, I'd hold him and tell him the truth about our family. Not the curse, not the fear, but the lesson I'd learned the hard way. That love was worth the risk. Always. Marcus called that evening with updates on the company. We'd restructured after I recovered, bringing in partners, delegating responsibility. I still ran cross-security, but I no longer lived there. No longer let it consume every hour of every day. Rowan had taught me that. Balance, perspective, the understanding that power meant nothing if you had no one to share it with. After dinner, pasta that Rowan had cooked while I pretended to help, we sat on the couch together, her feet in my lap, my hands rubbing the ache from her ankles. These small domestic moments had become my favorite part of the day. "I saw Connor today," she said quietly. I stilled. "Where?" "At the coffee shop in town. He's been sober for 8 months, working construction, going to meetings." "Did he ask for money?" "No," she said. "He apologized. For everything. Said he understood if I never wanted to see him again, but he wanted me to know he was trying." "Do you believe him?" She was quiet for a moment. "I want to, but I'm not ready to let him back in. Not yet. Maybe not ever." "That's fair," I said. "You don't owe him forgiveness just because he's your brother." "I know," she said, "but I told him about the baby. Figured he should know he's going to be an uncle." "How did he take it?" "He cried," she said. "Said he wanted to be someone our son could look up to, that he'd do the work to become that person, even if I never let him meet the baby." I pulled her closer. "Whatever you decide, I support you. Always." "I love you," she said. "I love you too," I said. The words came easily now. No fear, no hesitation, just truth. That night, lying in bed, with Rowan curled against me, our son moving beneath my hand, I thought about my grandfather, about the warning he'd given me all those years ago. He'd been trying to protect me. I understood that now. Trying to save me from the pain he'd experienced, the loss he'd endured. But in doing so, he'd condemned me to a different kind of death. A life half-lived, a heart kept carefully locked away. Until Rowan. Until the moment she'd walked into my office with coffee on her blouse and fire in her eyes, and made me want to live instead of just survive. "Cillian?" Rowan's voice was sleepy. "You still awake?" "Yeah," I said softly, "just thinking." "About?" "About how you saved me," I said. "Not from the curse, from myself." She shifted to look at me, her green eyes luminous in the darkness. "We saved each other," she said. "I was drowning in obligation and duty, trying to fix everyone but myself. You showed me it was okay to choose my own happiness." "Best decision I ever made," I said, "hiring you." "Best decision I ever made," she corrected, "was loving you anyway." I kissed her then, slow and deep and full of everything I felt. Everything I'd been too afraid to feel for most of my life. And my heart kept beating. Strong, steady, alive. Because that was the truth my grandfather never understood. Love didn't kill. Love gave life meaning. And in choosing to love Rowan, In choosing her every single day, despite the fear, despite the curse, despite everything, I'd finally learned how to truly live. The curse was broken, not by magic or fate or divine intervention, but by choice, by love, by us. The end.